coming up on the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
I wrote 10 songs and I went to a trailer in Georgia and I recorded my album. And I thought that's how you did it. You just wrote 10 songs and you recorded an album. I didn't know you had to write 10 great songs.
I got 10. Let's do it.
I just always have lyrics in my head, and I've found that that's not normal for everybody. And I just thought that was like what songwriters do.
There's even some smokiness on it. I'm sure it spends some time in a barrel that has given it some smoke. What I'm trying to say is, I like it.
And now, the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
The cell phones have been silenced. The wine is poured. I hope you're sipping along with us. And just like that, the podcast begins. The Tall Mike Wine Podcast. The wine podcast that's not all about wine. All about wine in the wrong hands could be a little stiff. And I like to keep things loose here. I'm your host, Mike Stone, for the podcast heard in 67 countries on 6 continents and in 48 of these United States. All we're missing is the Dakotas. Are there still people there? Hello? Hello? Coast to coast, from Ashburn, Virginia to Davis, California, from Baldwin, Missouri to Chandler, Arizona, where one can ride the Desert Breeze Railroad. I hope it's air-conditioned. Wherever you are, many thanks for finding me. I appreciate your time. I'd also be much obliged if you were to show the love in the form of a rating and also subscribe. It helps so you don't miss an episode. And now, episode 45. From my studio in Novato, California, my guest is zooming in from Nashville, aka Music City, USA, and she is a musician. Voted Female Artist of the Year by the TRMA in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Dubbed the hardest working woman in country music by Bar Frog magazine. She's recorded 10 albums of original music, written songs for a few dozen other country music artists all over the world, and spends about 300 nights of the year belting it out on stage. She was recently in Sonoma and played a gig, followed the next day by wine tasting at Nicholson Ranch. And now she's here with me on the podcast, the Georgia Gypsy herself, Erica Sunshine Lee. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. And your hat is lovely. I'm going to put some pictures up on my Instagram so people can see you. You're dressed up for this Zoom call.
Oh, I'm dressed up for every day.
Are you? Is this just your normal look?
Yeah, I'm in Nashville, so I'm going to go out in a little bit and meet some friends.
Oh, very nice. It's great with all that travel. We're speaking to you from your home. How long have you called Nashville home?
I've been based here for 12 years, and now I probably come home 10 to 15 days a year.
And I'll bet it's nice to sleep in your own bed once in a while, right?
Last night was glorious. I've been on the road for 6 months straight, and it has been a human pinball for 15 years. So I am really happy when I get to relax, sleep in my own bed, and wake up, and then I have all the housework to catch up on.
Do things get a little dusty?
Not typically, because I have maid service that helps out with that. But yeah, definitely got to do some tidying up and do the laundry switch out and then go from the summer to winter. But I tour in Florida most of the winter, so I don't have to do a ton of winter clothes.
And how long until you're back on the road?
So I'll leave again on Friday morning, and I'm playing in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida for the remainder of the year.
Back at it.
I am.
Let's talk about this TRMA. I learned a new genre looking this up. Trop Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take a wild guess and say, was Jimmy Buffett sort of the patron saint of Trop Rock?
He sure was. It's like I compare it to Bob Marley and reggae, and Jimmy Buffett was definitely like the grandfather. I'm sure there's a lot of other people that have been writing beachy country music, but he was definitely the icon, the legend, and it's just been an incredible loss in the community of the Trop Rock world since I've kind of stumbled into it in the last 5 years. I was performing in Key West for the last 11, 12 years, but it was about 5 or 6 years ago I I was playing down there for the meeting of the minds, and that was when it just snowballed. And I started performing at all the Parrot Head events and festivals and all kinds of house concerts all over the country for Parrot Heads and tropical rock fans. And so they love the beach. They love hanging out. They're fun. They love to party, have a good time, but they also raise money for charity. And it's called Party with a Purpose. So I've felt right at home meeting a lot of really down to earth people who just love the music. They love each other. They're there to help out, and they have huge hearts.
So Trop Rock is sort of songs about the good life at the beach, life on the water, I'm guessing. I don't know. It paints a picture for me if you can.
Sun in the sun.
Trop Rock. Okay. Mm-hmm. Comparing SPFs of sunscreen, things like that.
Exactly.
Don't forget you're 45.
Flip-flop, finagling, all kinds of shenanigans at the beach. And it's not just rum and palm trees. There's definitely other songs that bring that chill mood. I've heard it's escapism. It's that longing for the life you dream of. And when a lot of people just spend their whole life dreaming of it, I think a lot of people are realizing life is so short. And if you can take that getaway now, my new single, Sand Dollars, was kind of depicting that exact thing. Don't wait till you're retired to live it up. Live it up now, because you aren't guaranteed then.
So Jimmy Buffett kind of had this whole other thing going on. I spent 15 years in commercial radio, and, I did a lot of top 40 and a lot of rock stations. And Jimmy Buffett sort of was in between the genres. He had his big hit with Margaritaville back in the 70s, and he had a few other radio hits not long after that. But then he just kept going on and on and on and on without radio. He just sort of had his own thing happening. And I guess it's this Trop Rock you're talking about. Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
I did not. I got to finally hear him live in Key West in February. So it was incredible to get to experience his concert and hear him just live. The way he interacts, he's so down to earth. He's so approachable. Everybody I know says he's just like that in real life. In fact, I wrote a song this morning with Brendan Mayer, and him and his father, Peter Mayer, have been touring with Jimmy for years. And so to be able to connect with those people that knew him on a personal level and just hear story after story of him always being full of laughs and jokes and fun, but also just a big dreamer, the kind of no worries attitude.
Well, and that type of success that he achieved also, really requires a lot of focus and a lot of drive. And that's like the stuff that's going on in his head. The gears are turning, and the face is saying, hey, we're just having fun. We're just playing our music. But there's a lot of focus involved, right?
Absolutely. Well, when you come up with hotels and clothing lines and restaurants and just like an entire empire that he created, it was a nonstop thing. And I'm sure that, I wouldn't have so many of the friends and gigs I have today if it weren't for him pioneering that.
Totally. The Trop Rock. Now, that's one way that you have been described. How do you describe your music?
I would say my songs are very rooted in country with like a rock and roll edge or an attitude mixed with a fun time, but I also bring hope and healing and humor and sass. And so the genres span. Some songs are old country, some songs are pop modern country, and there's alt country, and there's hints of rock and classic rock with some pop melodies, but also the subject matter just changes whatever mood I'm in. But I think when it's all said and done, I'm a storyteller, and that goes back to the roots of country music, is telling a story, just allowing people to go on that ride and that journey of the song.
Storytelling is huge. People are drawn to that. And you don't even think about it, but that's what draws you to a lot of things like movies and books and songs, is somebody's telling a story. Who are some of your favorite storytellers?
I think Willie Nelson is incredible. He's still relevant. How many years later, at 80 years old, he's still touring. Dolly Parton is absolutely an incredible artist and storyteller. She is able to go from gospel to Christian to country and to keep it rocking. Her newest single, Rockin' The Devil Can Go to Hell. And it's just so great that she has a way of making it relevant and also bringing those melodies. I think Stevie Nicks is probably my all-time hero, but I love Tom Petty too. So anybody that's able to grab you in. But what I love about them is the ability to go in and out and weave different melodies, different styles, different stories and they play different characters. And I love to do that. Like my song Bad Bitch is about a pirate in the 1920s, and any man that messed with her, she'd throw him overboard with concrete and she never got caught. And so the whole song is based on a true story about her life. And then being able to sing songs like Stand Up for the Flag and put myself in a situation, like sometimes it is first person, but many times like Mud on My Boots, Blood on My Hands, Ain't Nobody Gonna Take My Man is about a scorned lover who finds her partner cheating and then offs the mistress. So I love to be able to put myself in those shoes and kind of relate to those different stories. And definitely they're not all murder, they're redemption, they're addiction. They're things that a lot of times that I haven't gone through, but somebody close to me has. And I love being able to kind of come in and out of reality and tell those stories of fiction and nonfiction, and then interweave it in my own life.
That's one of those things that draws people to stories, is that if they are relatable, like, oh, I've been in that situation, I might react like that. Yeah. I want to talk about your singing and songwriting in a bit and what it's like to be on stage in front of a big audience. But first, I want to share a line from one of the emails we exchanged in the lead up to our conversation today. When I said I like each of us to be sipping wine to talk about on the podcast, you said, and I quote, "No problem. I got wine cases for days." So you're a little bit of a collector?
Lately, I've collected more than I even anticipated. I have really started developing a love for wine in the last 5 years and appreciation for it, more so because I've probably drank a lot more wine in the last 5 or 6 years. But in my earlier days, I really loved the sweet wines because I wasn't a fan of wine. And I remember going to the French restaurant Le Chapeau in San Francisco, and the chef Philippe, the owner, would come out and bring me the Gewürztraminer and the dessert. And I just love sugar. I grew up in the South. I mean, bring me the sweet tea, the Coca-Cola, all the sugar. Then as I started playing in wine bars, I moved on up to, there was like a Riesling that I liked. And after I got kind of a little bit used to that, I started with the Sauv Blancs. And then finally in April, I even liked a Chardonnay for the first time. So I can definitely tell my taste buds have grown, my palate has matured, but also I'm more particular with what I like now. And so whereas before I would have preferred a sweet, now I definitely like a drier wine. I love reds. I love heavy cabs. I could sip on a heavy cab without having a meal, which before it would probably have been more of a Pinot Noir that was more mild. So I really enjoy the Malbecs and some of the more earthy minerals. But it's interesting because it does shift with your mood, with the time of day, what you're eating. So I really can tell now, which is interesting because I know that back in the day I couldn't at all. So it's nice to be able to notice the difference and kind of find what you do like.
What you're describing is a real classic evolution for most people as they get into wine. The sweet wine, it's easy. You're used to things like soda pop and milk. And then you get into something a little drier and you're like, okay, I can kind of handle this. And your palate develops. It's all about adapting your palate to it, especially because growing up in the United States, we do grow up on a diet of things that are rather sweet and creamy. Tell me about the first wine that ever meant anything to you, if you can.
Wow, that's a good question. Would probably say the first time I had a red that I liked, I was on a picnic with a guy in San Francisco, and he brought a bottle of Sonoma's La Crema Pinot Noir. And that was the first time that I tasted a red and I went, wow, this is like smooth. It did not burn as bad going down. It didn't taste like vinegar rubbing alcohol to me. And I think that whether it was the combination of the charcuterie board or just the fact that I was getting older or the fact that it was just a really good date. But I really liked that wine. And it was the first time that I can really iconically remember a specific brand of something that I liked. And playing in wine bars and playing all over Napa and Sonoma and Healdsburg, I had tried wine over and over and over, and I just never really had that love for it. And it's interesting because as you go further, I still probably would drink La Crema's Pinot Noir because of that fond memory, whether it would be my favorite red or not, just to go back to it. But I can tell you that there's several others I'm much more fond of now.
Well, what happens is you have a wine like that one. La Crema makes a very approachable wine because they're a mass producer and they're trying to make wine that everybody can have, from the casual wine drinker, the non-wine drinker, maybe even to the seasoned wine drinker. So they're very easy. And then when you start to really get into your own style and figure out what you really like, you might go back to that and say, that's a little too simple for me. But it's not a bad wine. It's a good, what I like to call gateway wine.
It is the gateway wine. And I love that I really noticed that where it stood out enough to where I would buy that again. Then I became more of a wine snob through the years after that because it changed my taste. And it just made me aware of the fact that when I used to drink it, obviously when you're drinking them at the beginning, you don't know what's what. And it is a personal preference, just like anything else with music. You can have a great song, but somebody might not like it. It doesn't mean it's a bad song. It's just not for them. That's
a great parallel because it's totally true. The appreciation of wines, the appreciation of music, these are 100% subjective things. You like what you like, and you can't really explain it, right? Mm-hmm. All right, the time has come on the podcast where I say to my guest, Erica Sunshine Lee, what is in your glass?
Well, this glass holds something I've actually never had before. I was out in Washington State this weekend staying with friends, and they know that I have an allergy to sulfites, and sometimes I'll get red wine will give me hot flashes. So this is a Stellar Organics Merlot with no added sulfites, organic and fair trade wine from South Africa.
Oh, wow. Okay. I thought you were going to say you had a Washington wine there.
I thought that they would have got me a Washington wine. In fact, I have a Washington wine in the fridge, but that's a Two Fox winery that happens to be 2 miles down the road. Last time I was there, I did go wine tasting there because a couple had just bought it and I wanted to try it out since it was the local wine. But this one they got just because of my high maintenance dietary issues. However, clearly for years I've drank wine with plenty of added sulfites and it's not killed me yet. So I am trying this new one to see if I do have a different reaction from the sulfites.
What's the name of the winery?
This is called Stellar Organics.
And it's a Merlot. I'm going to take a picture of it and boom. Now you mentioned the winery in Washington, the little winery in Western Washington, Two Fox, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Those Two Foxes wrote me an email just a few months ago, told me they were listening to the podcast and they were enjoying it. Isn't that amazing?
Small world.
It's a very
I should be drinking their wine on the podcast. I might even pop it open in a minute.
There you go. And did I give you your very own official Tall Mike Wine Podcast coasters when you visited the winery?
You did. And mine has a big ring of red wine around it.
Well, that's on the back. See, that's printed on there.
Oh, I thought I spilled it. That's so funny. I was just totally assuming that it was mine.
No, the coaster has a red wine stain on it that looks like you spilled on your glass and you set it on the coaster. My friend Amanda came up with that little flair of design.
I felt so guilty, like I ruined it.
No, you did not ruin it. Stop feeling guilty.
Perfect.
All right, let's talk about your roots now. You're the Georgia Gypsy, born in Georgia?
Born and raised in a small town in Northeast Georgia called Elberton, and it's the granite capital of the world.
Elberton, Georgia, granite capital of the world. Wow, I like that.
Athens.
Tell me about the early years. Were your parents musicians at all?
Not at all, but Mama did sing in the choir at church, and I started singing in choir when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. In fact, there's a video of me singing at church. Mama posted on Facebook recently, and that was the joke of how I got my start. And I started singing in plays, and in middle school and high school, I led worship in the youth group in the worship band. And I got to sing with a group around North Georgia, a group of ladies. And then I moved to California and I started singing karaoke every night. I could break into an underage bar. Anybody that would let me in, I would sing karaoke, and they had no idea I was 18. But that was really kind of what did it for me. I was just hooked on singing. I love music since I was able to order the Columbia and the BMG 13 CDs for the price of one. And then I'd order them again. So I've always been into music and had a musical ear. I took piano when I was 9, but that was only a short-lived. But
it exposed you to reading music and some theory, probably.
It did, even though I was a musical ear and I was probably so stubborn that I didn't learn the music like I should have. I've always just been more about the sound of it, and I did not put in the time and effort like I should have, and I wish I would have, to learn how to read music. I've got the gist of it, but I really was self-taught. I was in San Francisco, met a guy named John Lawton, and he had a classic rock band called the Rodeo Clowns. So I started performing all over the Bay Area with him and his band. And 2 years later, I started my own. He pissed me off one night and yelled at me. So I quit and took the drummer and the bass player and started my own band. So that was kind of the beginning of that. And
did you write a song about it?
Well, I actually wrote.
Because it kind of sounds like the arc of a song.
Well, and it's funny. I don't really think I ever specifically wrote a song about him or that incident, but it was more of the tumultuous breakup that I went through at the time. And I think that was the catalyst, because I'd written poetry when I was younger, but kind of being able to put it down on paper to help you get through a tough breakup when you think it's the one and young love and you're together 3 years and it blows up in your face. And then you start just pouring your heart out. I just wrote songs about it. And I remember him showing up to the show. The first time I ever played an original show, my friend Byron played guitar. He helped me put music to a couple of the first songs because I didn't even know how to play guitar, and went on YouTube and learned 3 chords. And I sang 5 feet away from him at the Brainwash Cafe in San Francisco, where I performed my 5 original songs that I had written. And my first one was called Not Hard to Replace. And I said, once I couldn't get through the night without you, now I can barely remember your face. Time was the drug I needed to realize you're not hard to replace. And he had tears and I had tears, and it was pretty tough. But I wrote 10 songs and I went to a trailer in Georgia and I recorded my album. And I thought that's how you did it. You just wrote 10 songs and you recorded an album. I didn't know you had to write 10 great songs.
No. I got 10. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wait until it's perfect. Like if you wait till you're ready for kids, you'll never have one. I think if you wait until the album's perfect, you'll never record it. And so many people wait. Instead of just, for me, I'm more of like throw myself to the wolves, learn as you go, fine tune it. And the second album, I went to a much higher end studio in Half Moon Bay, recorded it with Steven Passero, and then I went to Nashville and I knocked on every door up and down Music Row because I didn't know any better. I thought that's what you did. And finally, they let me into a studio and I hung out with them for 4 hours and watched them record. And they came in and handed a work tape and charted the song and recorded it in 30 minutes and it was done. And they went to the next one. It was just so mind blowing because the guys I had worked with in my band, we took forever in Half Moon Bay to get the song right. And so that was the first time I experienced it. And we hung out and I got their information and they recorded my first song in Nashville, that same crew. And I've worked with Buddy Hyatt, the producer, and a lot of the same studio musicians for the last 8 albums. It was a really cool door that I knocked on.
You've got some real ties to the Bay Area then. What was it that brought you out to California initially from Georgia?
So my sister was a flight attendant for United Airlines and she got based there and she got married. It was my freshman year of college and I went to visit her. After they got married that weekend, we flew out on a Monday and went to San Francisco, and I was going to stay for a week or 2. And I just never left. I moved in with him for 3 years and then I found my own place. And then I just started writing songs and touring all over. And she moved back after they had their child. But that was a while back. So I stayed there for several years. And then it was finally time. I knew as a songwriter, if I wanted to really make it a career, I needed to move back to Nashville. So I made the move about 12 years ago. And I've been touring back and forth to the West Coast 4 or 5 times a year ever since. But
what were those early karaoke go-to songs for you?
Oh my gosh, my favorite, Something to Talk About, Bonnie Raitt. Any Shania Twain song, Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under is still one of my favorite go-tos. Fleetwood Mac, Anything. I love Dreams. And actually, that's the only cover song I've recorded in 10 albums. It's on my Bulletproof record. That has always had my heart. It was the first song I sang at an open mic with John Lawton, and he since then has passed away. And so that one was really special to me because it was kind of what I think he saw in me, and he heard my voice that he knew as a raspy alto belting rock singer that fit my voice in. And it's true. Ever since then, I think I've always really gravitated towards that style of music.
So you talked about piano lessons. At what point did little Erica strum a guitar for the first time? That
was 15 years ago. I just started playing guitar then and writing 15 years ago, 2007.
So you just picked up a guitar. Are you pretty much self-taught then?
I am. I went on YouTube and learned G, C, D, and E minor, and I got a capo, and I would just literally Google 3-chord songs and play a 3-hour show moving the capo up and down the neck because I didn't know any better. I just wanted to play 3 hours and get paid, and I knew that I could play a show if I knew 4 chords.
That's incredible. I like that story. So were you writing songs before you knew what a songwriter was? Was it just a thing you did, or did you model it after someone?
It was definitely before I knew. I mean, I just had so much in my head and in my heart. I've always had lyrics. I've always just written even poetry when I was probably 12. But I think just being able to express my feelings on paper and see what other people were going through around me and the struggles and the triumphs and the travels and the adventures. And that was kind of what was feeding me. My first album was a song called Tamarindo. It was about my first trip to Costa Rica. And so I guess you could say I was Trop Rock way back then before it was even a thing in my mind.
Before you knew what Trop Rock was.
Exactly. And that's why people said, "Oh, you've gone Trop Rock." And I was like, "Well, I didn't go Trop Rock. I just traveled my whole life." And those are things that inspire me. And I write about everything from my faith in God to murder songs. So it spans the realm. And I definitely have, honed certain things and certain topics, but I go back to my roots of what I love, what I'm about, what I appreciate, what I feel. And sometimes it is a redemption song and sometimes it is a drinking partying song. And so it's kind of the mood I'm in or what I've gone through. And sometimes I could channel today or sometimes I can channel 15 years ago.
So do you wake up in the morning sometimes and just have an idea in your head and you start crafting a song? Is that the way it works?
Very often I do. I just always have lyrics in my head, and I've found that that's not normal for everybody. And I just thought that was like what songwriters do. But even when I have songwriting appointments, when I come home to Nashville and I write for other artists, I would say 9 times out of 10, I'll get like a hook or a melody or an idea, either driving or in the shower or when I'm alone with my thoughts or when I'm waking up in the morning. And that's like 80-90% of the time what I end up writing, because it's something that hits me like a lightning bolt and I have to catch it or else it'll be gone.
Right. You have to go with it. You have to strike while the iron is hot, as they say.
Well, for instance, this morning when I was on the way to write with Brendan, I was driving over there and I just thought about like a love being, kind of like a love kind of disappearing and getting blurry. And I just thought the title pixelated was a cool word, because it kind of goes out of focus and you lose the clarity of what you loved in the beginning about it. And so it kind of ended up, and he liked the idea. So we ended up writing this whole song around that.
And pixelated is a great 4-syllable word that I'm sure you can do lots of things with musically, right? Mm-hmm. Pixelated.
Yeah, it was a cool melody. Yeah, he came up with a really cool way to land it. And so it has a really nice melody, which makes for great harmonies too.
That's really cool. Are you ready to hear what's in my glass?
Yes. What is it?
I have a Pinot Noir. Now, you were just in California. You just visited Nicholson Ranch.
I'm just kidding.
And it's... Sadly, no, I do not have the La Crema Pinot in my glass. I actually have a Pinot in my glass that is from further north. We're going to go up north to the next state.
Is it? Oh, you know what? It's not Bend.
Well,
it's not Bend, or is it? It's in that
Bend.
Low Valley, Willamette Valley.
Willamette Valley, yes. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
Bend is not in the Willamette Valley, but Bend is a beautiful little town. That's more on the central to eastern side of Oregon. The Willamette Valley is actually very far west, where it's cooler because they're close to the coast. And that is a great place to find yourself growing Pinot Noir because those grapes don't need as much heat. Mm-hmm. What I have in my glass is a Pinot Noir from a winery called Big Table Farm. And the table is all that is big because the farm is very small. The winery is very small. In fact, the wine that I have in my glass is one of their single vineyard Pinots. It is from the Cattrall brothers vineyard, which is, I guess, a vineyard up there in the Eola Amity Hills, which is a sub-region of the Willamette Valley. And the Big Table Farm 2017 Cattrall brothers Pinot Noir is pretty delicious. But you know what? It's a really different animal from the Pinot I'm used to here in California, especially Nicholson Ranch, because we make Pinots that are pretty big, pretty full-bodied. I don't know if when you tasted them, you thought, oh, these are, pretty full-bodied for Pinots. This is more in the Oregon model. It's a little more delicate. This is a lighter style. You get a little more nuance, a little more subtlety, but very nice. Got a lot of like floral notes on the nose. Almost get something that kind of smells like a pine tree on the nose. And then you get into the flavors. You got a lot of cherry and a lot of berries. And then you get into a little bit of cranberry and pomegranate. And then there's even some smokiness on it. I'm sure it spends some time in a barrel that has given it some smoke. What I'm trying to say is I like it. Big Table Farm is a small winery. In fact, this wine that I'm sipping, 136 cases produced. That is a very small amount. Big Table Farm is run by a couple, Brian Marcy and Claire Carver. Brian is the winemaker, And Claire is the artist and farmer. Claire is the person responsible for the labels. And I showed you this label when we first started. That's a very intricate pencil drawing of an old-time pickup truck. And that's all that's on the front label. I'm going to put a picture of it on my Instagram. It's a very intricate pencil drawing. And if you go on their website, you can see pictures of Claire doing the drawings. She's quite an artist, and she is a big-time farmer. She runs the farm. They have 70 acres, and they raise animals and produce seasonal vegetables. They have free-range hens, pasture-raised pigs, goats, a team of draft horses, beehives, and grass-fed cows. They're building a managed intensive grazing system of farming that builds the soil and sequesters carbon and moves towards a healthy, sustainable, and diverse farm. I love all that verbiage.
That's amazing.
I love to know somebody's out there, right? Isn't that great? Claire harvests the honey. She works the team of draft horses. She stirs the compost. Well, somebody's got to stir the compost.
Mm-hmm. Usually I'm the ship disturber.
You can use that in a song. I'm just stirring the compost.
Yeah.
And she also forages mushrooms in the woods. And they sell meat from the farm. They sell eggs. And, of course, they have wine that they make that is delicious. Big Table Farms. All right. Erica Sunshine Lee, what gigs do you have coming up? Assuming this will air beginning on about the 9th, next Monday. This will probably upload. Where will you be?
Well, I just performed in Blue Ridge, Georgia. That's in the North Georgia mountains where there's some beautiful wineries up there as well. And I was at a brewery called Angry Hops. And then I'll be going to Florida, Alabama for the remainder of the year. I'm playing in Florence, Alabama, the home right beside Muscle Shoals, where obviously is a huge recording studio and
world famous.
Is very well known for a lot of hit records. And then I will be back in the Jacksonville area performing at Monkey's Uncle. And that's October 18th. And then I will head down to Key West. Well, first of all, I'll go to Gulf Shores, Alabama for the huge meeting of the Minds Festival. And that's like a huge Parrot Head convention every year for 30 years. They've had it in Key West. And this is the first time they've moved it to Gulf Shores, which is kind of where Jimmy Buffett got his start, performed all over Floribama, Gulf Shores, Pensacola, Perdido Key, in that area. And then I'll be back in the Florida Keys for the remainder of the year from November 4th, Hawks Cay, and then down in Key West. So it's going to be a really warm winter for me. That's
nice. That's very smart of you to strategize your tour.
I have done this on purpose. It's not my first rodeo, Mike. I have learned that I don't need to go to North Dakota in -8 degrees in December or North Michigan in the snow in January.
Yeah. That's smart. We talked about that big festival of Parrot Heads. Tell me about big audiences. What's like the biggest venue, the biggest audience you've ever stood on stage in front of, and how does it feel?
I think it's electrifying. I was so energized, and it was just an incredible feeling. I was at the Summerfest, which is the world's largest music festival in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I performed there for 4 years in a row, and the biggest show, I was probably 20,000 people at the Coors Light stage, I believe. I opened for Randy Houser with my band. And to just look out and see a sea of people when the lights shine and everybody is just singing along or raising their glass or having a good time or clapping, there's just no feeling like it. I love the intimate venues where you can hear a pin drop and I can actually tell stories behind the songs and joke around with the audience and really interact with people. But it's a completely different night and day. I mean, just the amount of energy that's in an arena or an outdoor festival or a fair, or being able to look out and see that amount of people that are enjoying the moment and are feeling like what you're putting out there. I think it's really cool. That's probably my favorite show that I've been able to be a part of.
I just can't imagine the amount of energy you're getting from that crowd, and then just pushing it back out at them in your songs.
And then I really stripped it down and I kicked my band off stage for one song and I played Love at 100 Degrees. And it's just like the most sparse song I've ever written, with just one note walk downs, sifting through sand, trying to find the gold. And it's just like all of a sudden this crazy, loud, drunk, rowdy Saturday night audience is just like, what? And that was a really cool moment too, to see the contrast of the rowdy, rip roaring audience, and then just to kind of bring it down. And then it was just like you get chills.
Right.
That's
They
really,
have to
really cool.
they have to stop what they're doing and they have to lean in to hear
Mhm.
what you're saying. And it just changes the whole
Dynamic.
dynamic. That must be really cool. I wanted to ask this of someone in the business of the recording arts. As time has passed, I'd say the last decade or so, are record sales even a thing now that so many people get their music through streaming? Lay it out for me in terms of where the income comes from, or is touring the main thing?
Touring and merch is still my main source of income. Absolutely. I would say 15 or 20 years ago, I could have probably retired by now with CD sales, but it's just been such a different monster. And I'm sure the movie industry can relate. I remember ordering my first album and I would just order 1,000 copies. And by the end of the year, I might run out and then just keep ordering again. But now it takes a lot more. But the good thing is having a loyal fan base, especially of Parrot Heads and tropical rock fans. They want the tangible. And a lot of them still have CD players. But as I'm finding live audiences under 40 years old, if you're probably under 45 years old, you're going to stream it. But there are people that want the physical copy for keepsake. They want it signed. And so loyal fans, I think, are still happy to support the artist and they know what it means. I have a huge store of t-shirts, hats, koozies, my bumper sticker, Don't Be a Richard. That's one of my songs on my last album. Those sell really good. And I have 2 children's books that I've written that have gotten published. So I do sell those at shows, Butterfly, Billy the Bully. And so I've been creative and have koozies and certain items. Sometimes I'll bring in necklaces or earrings or things to just kind of keep it fresh and bring like something new, that souvenirs. Like I have a wine glass that says "Pinkies up, bitches," because I was at a show one day and I said, "Cheers, y'all." And, you drink during the show and you raise your glass. But apparently there was another band in our genre, Drop Dead Dangerous, says, "Cheers, y'all." And they have it on their merch. And so a lot of people said, "Oh, they already have that." And I said, "Okay, pinkies up, bitches." And that just became my thing. And so now I even have wine glasses and wine tumblers that say that. But you've definitely got to be creative in this music industry. And I think so many people are streaming now. In fact, I just put a post last week on Facebook and said, if I do a vinyl, who would be interested in buying it? Because I've never printed a vinyl.
Right.
Instantly, I had 60 fans say I would.
Okay.
So if I get those 60 people to pre-order, I can go out and I will, produce the vinyl. But if you only have 10 people that want to make a vinyl and it's $25 cost for me to make it plus shipping, it's just not cost effective. So I would love to do something like that on my 11th album, which I'm working on right now. And I'm going to do a Kickstarter project this week and start trying to get people to support that. So if people are interested, they can go to the website, ericaSunshineLee.com, and hopefully we'll make that CD a reality soon. And then instead of printing up the actual CD, I think I will limit it to just maybe 50 or 100 vinyls and see how that goes.
I like that. Hey, thanks for mentioning your kids' books. That was my next question. Erica Sunshine Lee is also a published author of children's books. Tell me how that happened.
So my first book was actually a song on my 3rd album. I've written this song, Butterfly, and it just came to me. I remember as I was driving through Texas, in a relationship, especially long distance for an artist, I'm sure many artists can agree that unless you're with somebody in the industry that can like tour with you and live that life on the road with you, it's just so hard for people to relate and understand and really support that. And so Butterfly was kind of more about spreading your wings, following your dreams, even though it takes sacrifice and there's a lot of loneliness that comes along with it. There's so much fulfillment and joy that comes with following your passion that I think once you chase your passion and you fulfill yourself, then you'll have somebody that will come along that will be the right fit for you versus trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So that book is really just meant to encourage kids to follow their dreams. And sometimes it does take a lot of sacrifice and it's not easy, but I think it's worth it in the end. So it's far beyond what probably a 5-year-old will gain from reading it. They just probably like the butterfly image and a lot of the girls love the book because it's just cute imagery and it's a sing along. But the cool thing is you can play the song and they can read the book. So it's a good reading tool for like a young kid that if they play the song, they can kind of turn the page on their own and follow along reading it. My second book was just a story that I wrote. And I think that so many people can understand in this day and age, it's really easy for people to spout words of hate on the internet and say mean things. And us adults probably need to read it more than the kids do. But I think for me, I was bullied when I was younger. And I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that, high school bitches can be full. And there's so many people that are rude and hateful and just those words that never leave you. And so this book was just a story that reminds people that their words matter and speaking kind words. And instead of making fun of somebody that's different, maybe ask questions or relate to them or just keep your mouth shut if you can't say anything nice. I mean, that's kind of the old rule.
Mm-hmm.
So this book is an anti-bullying book, and being able to share it with elementary schools and then play my songs afterwards, I think kids can open up the dialogue. And I put some questions at the end of it just to ask them, have you been bullied and how did it make you feel? And how did you handle the situation, so that it gives kids an ability to like process that, recognize that it's going to happen. A lot of times it is inevitable, but the way you handle it can change it. And I even question, is the way that the character in the book the best way to handle it? Because sometimes you've got to speak up for yourself. And sometimes you got to take matters into your own hands. You can't just tell the teacher and it be okay. So
right.
I think a lot of adults, when they're reading this, hopefully with their kids or teachers with their children in the class, can get it through to the children that even if it does happen, A, it can be avoided, but B, it can be handled in a way that it won't happen again. And so I'm working on my third book getting published right now, and I'm excited to be able to share that with students. It's just been really cool to talk to kids and to be able to get their feedback of what experiences they've had with bullying, how they've handled it, and maybe plant the seed of, you can avoid being bullied or you can avoid being the bully if you just watch your words and are kind.
That's great stuff. Billy the Bully.
Billy the Bully.
Now, I'm assuming, as we said before, you're enjoying some downtime at home.
Mm-hmm.
What's downtime look like for you when you're home in Nashville? What are you up to this evening?
So typically on a Tuesday night, there is a place called The Local where a lot of songwriters go to network. There's a songwriter showcase. That's one of my favorites, go-to spots. If I am networking or if I just want to go out and see some friends, that's a really great place. There's no cover charge. It's easy to park there. It's not downtown on Broadway. So a lot more locals will go there than the tourists. But I just love hearing great songs, and I love being able to see people who are talented and to get to share that. And a lot of times you end up bumping into an old friend or hearing a new songwriter, and the whole collaboration of Nashville is really cool because you can walk up to that person after the show, say, hey, I love your song. I'd love to write sometime. And the next morning we're in my house writing a song.
Wow. That's really great. It's great to be among that community.
It is. And it's such a different community because when I was in LA, people looked at me like I was crazy when I said, hey, do you want to write sometime? Because I just thought that's what everybody did. And it was just so different from being in Nashville versus California. Obviously, the South is more friendly, more known for just the collaboration versus the competition. And co-writing is a huge thing in Nashville. Like I said, this morning I was writing with Brendan Mayer, and when I come home, it is an opportunity to get face to face with these artists or other writers that I don't get to see. And for probably 7 to 10 years, I've been doing FaceTime writes or Skype writes back before FaceTime was even a thing and before Zoom was even a thing, before COVID. I can remember many times because I am on the road so often that I still want to stay relevant. I still want to stay connected. And I would set up co-write meetings, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m. And while I'm on the road, get to write with the other artists that like on a night like tonight, I'll go out and meet 10 or 15 artists or writers that I respect or like and then get their contact information. So it's still really a networking trip when I'm home. I don't feel like I'm ever off work. I do feel like it's very enjoyable, though, to be able to meet new people, make new connections, but also kind of rekindle those kinships or friendships of other co-writers that I respect.
You can call it work, but I think it's something else.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's your life, and I think you love it.
Oh, absolutely. If you don't love this, you can't be in this industry long. Not for 15 years. Well,
they say find what you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. You're just doing what you love to do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's awesome. Erica Sunshine Lee, your website's ericaSunshineLee.com.
That's right.
And then you've got the social medias out there and all that other stuff. Erica's really a super nice person, and I encourage you to follow her along as she continues on her Trop Rock adventure.
my country trop rock journey. And if you follow Bands in Town, it's a great app for all music lovers. You can add me there and follow me, and that way you'll know when I'm in a city near you, because I do tour across all the states and even international touring in Europe and Australia, New Zealand. So you just never know when I'll show up in a venue near you.
Except not in North Dakota in the wintertime.
Hopefully not. But it's still possible.
The Tall Mike Wine Podcast was conceived and is written, produced, edited, and maintained by yours truly. If you'd like to help support the show financially, look for the Support the Show link in the show notes or visit tallmikewine.com for subscription information, and I will thank you in advance for your support. Don't forget to rate the podcast, and if you're feeling wordy, write a review. Oh, and tell your friends they need the Tall Mike Wine Podcast in their lives. I promise I don't take up a lot of space for a tall guy. To see behind the scenes from today's session, follow me on Instagram at Tall Mike Wine. And if you can't live without your very own set of official Tall Mike Wine coasters, just drop me an email to tallmikewine@gmail.com. Thanks for joining me this time. I'll have a new episode soon. In the meantime, check out the archives for some fun wine-adjacent conversations going back 2.5 years. That wraps up episode 45. Thanks to Erica Sunshine Lee for sitting in. From Novato, California, I'm Mike Stone, a.k.a. Tall Mike Wine. Keep swirling, keep sniffing, keep sipping. Cheers.